So I'm kind of watching everybody settling down. Um, so, trying to come into stillness and sitting in a posture that supports you being alert and still relaxed. This balance that we seek after with our practice. And at first, it's more of a acting as if kind of thing, when we begin to practice meditation, and really in many just periods of meditation, might not seem like much is happening. And so we have to be patient and just sit with that. Sit with nothing happening. Or maybe it seems like too much is happening, but it's not the stuff that you were hoping would happen. That's why it's so helpful to focus more on mindfulness, just on being mindful of your experience, than to have some idea of what you want to get out of the practice. So starting by just feeling how your body feels right now. You can have your eyes closed or just have your gaze lowered. So if you've been busy or if there's a lot of energy in the mind, it might even be difficult just to feel your body in a clear way, or for the mind to sort of settle enough just to focus on something as simple as sensations in the body. So one of the things we can do to kind of work with that is to move the attention through the body. And so that sort of active attention can help us to kind of stay with it. You can move the attention from the head and then move it downward through the body as slowly as works for you. So spend a few seconds feeling each part of the body. And along with that, just feeling the sensations. You can see if there's an opening to relax. So just noticing any tension or tightness and seeing if you can soften that. Moving the attention down from the face and the head, down the shoulders, and the torso, the hips and pelvis, the legs and feet. With this practice, this simple practice, the Buddha suggests to just reflect that there is a body. that here there is a body is being felt. So the instructions on paying attention to the body use the classical 4 elements as a framework. So the element of earth is the feeling of weight or density in the body. It could also be lightness. So notice if you can feel the body as weight or lightness. The fire element is the sensations of temperature, warmth or coolness. See if you can notice warmth or coolness in the body. You might feel both. The air element is movement. Of course, there's the breath and the movement that goes with the breath. And there are sensations of pulsing, the water element is both the liquid we find, we can perceive, like in the mouth, but further it's the cohesion element. It's actually fluid that holds the body together, just like when you add water to flour, creates cohesion. And you might have sensations that don't clearly fit one of these models, sort of sensations of energy in the body that might be thought of as movement, like air, or they might be something like the nervous system that you might associate with the fire element. We don't want to turn this into a sort of mental excursion, trying to fit sensations into some categories. The point really is to start to distinguish that there are multiple types of sensations. When we say there is a body, there's not just one thing that we're talking about. So sitting with the kind of open awareness that holds all these sensations. And this gives us a sense of one of the things the Buddha points to about self. Part of what we associate with self is our body. And yet, as we bring mindful attention to it, we see that this thing we call a body is many things. It's not just one thing, and is so dynamic that even the things that it is are not stable. So this really is meant to put us into another way of understanding our experience. Or perhaps we could say of not understanding our experience, but just being with it. We break out of the realm of categories and solidness, and just step into the realm of direct experience. Experience that isn't defined by language. We'll see if you can sit in this kind of openness, that is just receiving experience, not naming it, not controlling it, not venturing into liking or disliking, preferring, not measuring, judging. And this then is a kind of ongoing letting go. The mind keeps grasping for something solid, something familiar, some word, some definition. And we just keep letting go and coming back to just this essence of being, the felt experience, the experience of being alive in a body. The breath is our friend in this practice. The most familiar and essential part of our moment-to-moment living. Everything depends upon the breath. It's also our direct connection to the world around us as we breathe in the air. Really quite miraculous. Our body knows how to take in the air and then process the oxygen to keep us alive. Then to breathe out and get rid of what we can't use, what poisons us. We're never separate from the world. We can't be. We depend upon this air. Not my air. Thank you. So, Friday night. You got big plans for the 3-day weekend? Yeah, it's a little strange. All right, so I'll take questions at any point, and if you, I try to keep up with the chat if you put something in the chat, or you can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself. But I'll start talking a little bit, and then hopefully you guys will chime in. I I've I was going to say always, but I have to be careful about words like always. I have long been curious about, what meditation is and what it is supposed to do, and I think that I came to it with all these sort of ideas that were just sort of mystical ideas that were kind of in the air. And I mean, I started meditating back in the 70s, and it was all seemed sort of mystical then. But and then there's the modern, sort of very modern mindfulness movement is all kind of about much more practical, sort of the other spectrum, right? It's just like, oh, this is for your health or stress or brain health or something. And so, and all of those things can be true. There can be a mystical element to meditation, and there can be health elements to it. But I guess my question is kind of like, how does this work? Is sort of like a core question for me. Like, if I have a mystical experience, like, how does that work? Or if I have a healing experience, how does that work? Because the practice, I mean, what was I guiding you in tonight was just to be aware of your body, but clearly I was also trying to point you to something else, right? So maybe that's a good place to start with, is that there's mindfulness, which is just cultivating this quality of awareness that's very intentional, and that essentially what I think what mindfulness is trying to see, what is really true. And so in that question, we immediately have to face our own biases and our own conditioning, that because what we believe is true is all filtered through our conditioning. So it puts us in this very tricky position of, oh, I have to start to watch my own mind, my own thoughts, my own reactivity. So a good place to start is noticing judgments, and noticing particularly kind of thoughts that are sort of defining things. And so to bring this kind of questioning to our own thoughts, which is really quite a evolved thing to do when you think about it. Like, that we're gonna have thoughts which are sort of dominate our understanding of reality, and then we're gonna question them and see if we can think about them in some way that reveals something about how accurate they are. So we could see, like, wow, this is complicated, right? And this is just the mindfulness part. Now, in order to do that, in order to develop this kind of mindfulness that has the kind of level of sensitivity and awareness that can start to, pick apart these layers of complexity in the mind, there has to be concentration. what we call concentration. In any case, it's not the best word, but enough calm in the mind that we're not carried away with all those thoughts. When we're really agitated and disturbed, or when the mind is just super busy, it's really hard to step out and get any view of those thoughts, right? It's so another part of meditation is this training, which is meant to calm. So we're doing these two things at least to start with. We're trying to pay attention in this particular way, but we're trying to also develop a stability in the mind that allows us to pay attention more effectively. But those are just the tools. Those aren't that's not where we're trying to get to. And it's easy to stay kind of, I don't want to say trapped, but kind of locked into this idea that, oh, if I can just be mindful and relaxed, or if I can be, really concentrated and aware, then I'm having a good meditation. And certainly you're probably having a pleasant meditation. But we're missing then the bigger picture, which is what I was also trying to point to, right? And pretty clearly, I was pointing to the view of self, of our of essentially our felt sense that this body is me. That was something I was doing in the guided meditation, and that just sort of came up. I don't always guide meditation the same way, but that was just sort of how it unfolded. And so this is this, when people ask what's the goal of meditation or why are we doing it, this is getting to something of the goal, right? Which is the understanding, what we call insight. The Pali, we call it Vipassana. So we have Vipassana meditation. The insight that then allows us to see reality, the truth, and what we call Dharma, in a way that changes our whole relationship to life, to ourselves, to reality. And this is the spiritual awakening, right? This is the spiritual awakening that Buddhist meditation is pointing towards insight. Now, that's pretty, special, and can sound like a big. It is a big deal, but it. I don't know. I guess depending upon where you are in your life, in your practice, in your spiritual life, in your recovery, that can seem either unattainable, or maybe it can seem the other, and maybe it seems banal. Maybe it seems just like, oh, sure, but I guess another piece of this is the sustaining of that insight, so that it's not that we're just meditating and we have an awareness and we have an insight, something opens up for us, but that we are able to bring that, integrate that into our lives and into our thinking and our way of seeing the world in a sustained way. And in that sense, then the insight comes back to the foundation aspects of practice, the mindfulness and the concentration. Because in order to sustain the insight, that is to say, in order to live the insight, we need to be mindful, and we need to have a certain amount of stability and calm in our heart and mind, or else we'll have the insight, but then we'll just get lost in our stuff again. And so this is one of the reasons why we meditate daily, and why we go on retreats regularly, and why we practice, and and much like recovery, which this is meant to be something about, right? It depends upon this one day at a time, one breath at a time um, form, this practice. So just like with recovery, the big book says, our uh, sobriety is contingent upon the daily maintenance of our spiritual condition. Don't know if that's a perfect quote, pretty close. That we need to maintain on a daily basis our spiritual condition, right? That in order to, and our spiritual condition is the calm, the wisdom, and the calm, the mindfulness, and the insight. And we do this practice to maintain that. We do we go to meetings to maintain that. We share. We study. This is like what our practice really is trying to maintain our spiritual condition. So that's sort of I hope that's a start. I hope maybe of a conversation. I hope that someone would like to maybe participate and join in here. Someone out there has a question or a thought. I'd like to, you can, as I said, you can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself if you feel brave. I'm just going to scroll through and see who's on board here. I have a few new faces. Welcome, everybody. I mean, if you're going to be like this, I can keep talking, but...
Okay, Kevin, I just unmuted. It's Bill.
Yeah, hi, Bill.
How you doing? Just recently, my wife and I a friend of ours told us about it. Now, you were talking about reading meditation books, and I have read too many of them, probably at this point. I don't know. I got to a certain point where I said, okay, I get it. And but there's a thing on this thing that's called Sounds True, which is a website. And there's a thing that's out there with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach, and it's a 40-day thing. And it's really kind of a cool thing. Well, Tara does something one day, and then Jack does it the next. And you can't go and like listen to all 40 in one day. It has to be one day.
Like an alcoholic, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool. And it goes on for about 15 minutes for each session. And so then what I usually do is just set my insight timer for 30 minutes. And so once they get through talking, I just continue on for another 15 minutes or so. But I just thought it's kind of a cool thing if anybody be interested in looking at it. It's free, doesn't cost anything. And both of them, just the amount of wisdom coming out of their mouths is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, and then other than that, hitting golf balls is meditative to me also, by the way.
Yeah, well.
Just
some are sicker than others,
I know, really sick. I know, I understand.
Yeah, Sounds True. They do a lot of stuff. They started as just an audio kind of company, and they publish books. They published my book Recovering Joy, and they did a whole audio program with me. Yeah, they're very, very busy. Well, they're offering a lot, and they've got this, Jack and Tara through Sounds True have a mindfulness teacher training program. Right. In fact, I see one or two people on here who have either been through that program or who are in it currently. So there's a lot of resources there. And that's a good point. I mean, just the, Insight Timer itself is a place with a lot of meditation instruction. Somebody's mentioning Tricycle, right? Has a 90-day meditation program starting soon. Oh, good. And it's interesting because, in several of my books, like a lot of Buddhist books, I write in like a guided meditation, but there, you're kind of writing it and you're going, like, how is this going to work? Like somebody's going to be reading the book and they're going to be like, okay, pay attention to your breath. And they're like, okay, what do I close the book now? Or how do I, how do you learn? It's hard. Books are not really the ideal way to learn, like, or to be guided in meditation. I feel like what I learn more from books is almost sort of how to understand my experience and then sort of tips that I can kind of take. But I think guided meditation itself is always best in some sort of audio form. Yeah. Oh, Bill, somebody's asking if you would post a link to that. Do you have a link to the Sounds True thing?
I just unmuted myself. Yeah, I would just go to Sounds True, which is a
Yeah.
website, and then just look for. Oh,
John, did you want to say something? I see you raising your hand.
I just had a question about, you're talking about these poles of kind of agitation and what's the other lack of, kind of where you have too much, not enough energy.
Yeah, yeah.
Could you say more about what to do when that's going on?
Too much, what, not enough energy?
Not enough energy.
Yeah. It frankly, it's really one of the hardest things to deal with. And I mean, I'll talk about it, but I think that a lot of times it just isn't. You can't. I guess what I find is that I just have to sit with it and kind of sit through it, uh, rather than thinking, oh, I can do something about it. Like with anxiety or restlessness, I feel like I can kind of use the breath to calm a body, that there's sort of a process I can work with. But with real, when it's really like you're nodding off and the mind is just sleepy, I just find I just have to keep sitting, because the only thing that seems to really work, I mean, I'll talk about a little bit more, but the thing that mostly works for me is just not quitting. And that if I keep sitting for like half an hour, 40 minutes, like at a certain point, my energy will come up. That it's almost as if the practice itself gives me energy rather than like, oh, I need to inject energy. That being said, the on a practical level, the thing that I will fall back on first and foremost is opening my eyes. If I'm nodding off, if I open my eyes, and it's often suggested just sort of halfway open your eyes. If I halfway open my eyes, it's like I'm still half, they'll close. I have to open my eyes. I have to just sit like this, just sitting, looking, and I'm just staring at whatever's in front of me. And that is the one thing that can kind of usually keep me from falling asleep. It's not perfect. And it's not very enjoyable for me. I'm so conditioned to meditate with my eyes closed that as soon as I open my eyes, I feel like I'm not really meditating. Is this really meditation? Does this count? But if I kind of just do it for a couple minutes, again, it kind of brings up my energy usually enough that I can keep going. The thing I'll say though, the good news is that when you're falling asleep, a lot of times it's because you're starting to get calm. You're getting some concentration going. And so I talked about this last time, I think, about I mentioned it anyway, how you have to kind of balance concentration and energy in meditation. And again, it's not something you can make happen. It's really something that just sort of happens out of the continuity of practice. But it is kind of encouraging to be, if you're sitting and you're finding, wow, I'm really getting kind of heavy and dull. Well, that's because things are quieting down. So a lot of times that's the hardest thing to get, is the calm. So the thing at that point is to stick with it and just see if you can arouse enough energy, keep the posture strong, do some deeper breathing, open your eyes a little bit, and you know the energy can tend to glide back. Now, when it's really persistent, and I've had long periods. Last year, I think it was last year, I went for about 6 months, where every time I sat down to meditate in the morning, I would just fall asleep. And I really got to the point where I thought, oh, I guess this is just the way it's going to be from now on, because I'm old. You know, it just sort of, and it just eventually stopped. So, you know, that's the mystery of this practice, and why you just have to be patient and persistent. So I don't know if that's any help, but
Hi, Kevin. I have just a comment or
yeah, and thank you.
observation. Hi, how are you?
Good. Well, you know.
Yeah, I know.
I'm pretty good. No, I am.
Yeah. I went to the store tonight. It was weird. You're right. This isn't just when you were talking towards the end about you know, the maintaining spiritual condition is what sobriety is all about. And this basically it made me wonder, how did I maintain my spiritual condition before I got into meditation? So for like my whole life, and then 15 years into recovery,
right?
Like, what was I doing? You know, I mean, I was in AA and I got a lot of fellowship and sort of, I guess, prayers, which, hey, don't knock it, nature.
Right. Yeah.
But it really makes me wonder, because it's just, you know, I'm just going deeper and deeper into the different layers. And especially in the last couple of months, right?
Yeah.
So it just makes me wonder how, you know, what was I doing?
You're going to leave us with that? You're not going to give us any answers?
Well, other than, what was I doing? I guess I had a strong spiritual foundation from early on, you know.
Yeah.
That, you know, I was tapping into some quality of that I'm not running a show, right? That I'm, and I think probably I got just being in nature probably a lot really helped. But I don't know. Because I see people differently now.
Yeah.
I really feel connected to even nature. I mean, I've always very connected through nature, but I feel much more part of the flow now. It's like I am the flow.
Yeah.
Like I am the river. I'm not the rock in the river. It feels a lot better.
Well, I mean, I do think that someone who is really living the 12 steps is maintaining their spiritual condition, because they're turning it over. Step 3, living the powerlessness, the honesty, the self-awareness that come through inventory.
Yeah.
And also you're following the precepts, basically, if you're really practicing recovery. You know, you're not harming people, you're trying to be of service. All of that is part of it, right? I mean, there's a lot of elements to spiritual condition.
Yeah.
And I think those of us who have fallen in love with meditation, we tremendously value this, but it's only a piece of it. And I think it's, to me, yeah, it's the crowning piece because it's the one that allows for serenity, which is like, right? Serenity is like kind of where we're trying to get to, I think, with recovery. And that's the piece that I often see people who are, have a strong program and they're definitely, in recovery, but they don't have serenity, who don't have a meditation practice. And that, even to say that, I feel like, well, that's kind of judgmental, but hey, why not?
You're right. Yeah, that makes me think that, I don't underestimate myself. Yeah, I worked the program, right?
Yeah.
I did the 12 steps, and I do them, not linearly anymore, but sort of.
Right.
So, right. Yeah. I mean, did a lot of work,
Yeah.
but I guess I just do. Maybe it is, I just feel happier now.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
I can honestly say that. It's
big
just
time. That's beautiful.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
So somebody asked a question here.
I
I just want to read this one in the chat that says, one that has a drifting mind, what is your advice to get benefit from meditation and you begin to feel that your ability just doesn't get it? Ah, boy. Because this is an important question. So just to say, like, that many people, when they start to meditate, have this feeling that their mind is just too busy to ever really meditate. And I bet like almost everybody here has had that feeling at some point. And so, I think to understand that that's part of the deal, that the first experience of trying to do this is, I can't do this. And so it really does take time. It doesn't happen overnight for a lot of people. Some people get it. Some people have more of an affinity. I know I meditated for quite a while before anything really happened, but I had a lot of faith in it, which was largely magical thinking. But magical thinking can be helpful. It can carry you through some things. So, but I would just say, really be persistent and patient, and just really try not to judge yourself. And like the idea of trying to grade your own meditation, it's like going to college and then you're going to give the grade. It's like, no, that's not your job. Your job is to go to college, take the classes, write the papers, hand them in, let the teacher judge you. And in this case, the teacher is very forgiving and loving. So everybody gets an A. So someone was speaking up. There was actually some raised hands. Oh boy, a bunch of raised hands. People.
We got a question over here.
Okay.
Hi, it's Cameron. I'm on a camera from work, but it's Cameron.
Oh, hi. Okay, Cameron. Hi.
So my question is kind of along the lines of what we've been talking about with Anne, asking kind of where she's at, and that's my question: is how do I gauge where I'm at, and what kind of progress am I making? What thing is kind of a discussion that I think kind of leads towards: are there traditional signposts? And I kind of have learned a little bit about jhana and samadhi and those kinds of things. I don't know, am I experiencing those things or not? I don't know exactly. So those things. And the other thing I was just going to say is, you were asking about books. And the one that I've been using is, and I'm probably going to ruin the name, mispronounce the name, but it's Tanasaro Bhikkhu.
Yeah.
With each and every breath.
Mm.
That's a really simple, kind of almost just a pamphlet that's been helping me, guiding me. But so that's the question that I have, is just, how do I know where I'm at? What am I experiencing? I'll mute myself.
Cameron, that's one of the questions that meditation teachers aren't allowed to answer, especially in public. you know, no, I don't want to be too, you know, uh, glib about that. Certainly, you know, when you talk about jhana, you're talking about how deep is your concentration developing. So that's one thing, and it's a useful part of practice, but it's not. Uh, to me, it's not the most important measure of practice. Most people can only develop jhana on long retreats, like like a month at least, to develop jhana. And to develop it, you need to have a teacher who knows how to teach it. It's not something in terms of developing, and people can just sort of fall into jhanas or stumble into them through their own practice. But when you talk about like developing them as a systematic practice, you need guidance. And Lee Brasington is the uh, teacher that I've worked with in that regard. I'm going to put his name in here, and you can, if you type his name into Mr. Google, Mrs. Google, whoever, into Google, then you will find it. You'll find his website. But beyond that, you know, it's, you know, to me, it's really hard to think about, you know, this practice like in gradations, uh, or to sort of think of my meditation practice as somehow separate from something else, from my life, you know. Uh, I mean, yeah, you can pursue it in that way, but it's not, if it's meaningful, it's not separate from your life. You know, if what's coming through it is integrated into your life. And so it's affecting how you see the world, just the way Anne was talking about, like being happier or being less stressed or being more wise or seeing that your relationships are more harmonious. And those are the ways that if you're going to, you know, judge yourself, or, you know, that your progress, like how's your life progressing? I think getting overly wrapped up in how's my meditation progressing can actually be risky, because you start to think, oh, it's more important that I get really deep in my meditation than that I be living an integrated life. And I say that as someone who, you know, if you read One Breath at a Time, you know that, like, you know, I got really into meditation before I got sober, and I thought it was going to like fix me, and it didn't. And you know, that I wound up, you know, going off the rails because I was sort of too much on just the spiritual side of life, and you know, the material world was like completely askew. So but you know, if you ever want, uh, in terms of any individual's practice, it's something that I could really only talk about one-to-one. So if you want to talk to me about that, you know, shoot me an email, and we'll have a phone call or something. You know, yeah, happy to do that. So, you know, I'm not going to give up on you with all these. You know, a few people have raised their hands, and I want to welcome you to speak. And you know, I don't have to quit at 8 o'clock. Anybody who needs to go. I should, though, put in the my Dana information. So if people want to offer Dana to me on Venmo. But Alexandra, did you want to say something? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I'll make it short because this might be related to individual practice, but I think it just might be a thing that happens. I've been meditating inconsistently since 2014, and but pretty consistently nowadays. And I remember when I started, and also it's happening now, that when I seem to relax, the more and more I seem to relax, when I'm in session, I'll like jerk, like not like when you're falling asleep, and you want to wake up. But
Okay.
I'm just thinking this might be kind of common, and I just haven't heard about it in my travels. But
Yeah.
any Joe
Yeah.
Cocker kind of thing that goes on sometimes?
Joe Cocker. Wow, that's funny. Yeah, he came on Spotify today. Um, yeah, I've had that experience. Um, and yes, I'm glad you distinguished it from the falling asleep, because that
Yeah.
happens too, right? That's another one. But yeah, sometimes you're meditating, and it generally seems to happen when you're settling, and then it's like a jolt, and your whole body just kind of jumps. That's what you're describing. I've never heard an official word on that. My take on it is that something is just being released. Some energy is kind of being released. Some tension is just released. It's kind of weird and a little bit scary, but I'd say it's certainly not. I generally, as long as we're talking about like progress, I don't know that it's a sign of progress, but it's a sign of like something's happening, right? So, did you want to say anything else? Because I see you.
No, I just thought it was something dynamic is happening, and maybe some energy currents are
Right.
being released.
No,
So
that's exactly what I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you.
But, I know it'd be a good one to ask somebody like, well, see, probably Jack Kornfield, or even like a more of a meditation master would probably say something very similar to what I said, because it's like, if you try to make it too like give it too much meaning, right, woo woo, then no. But it's not to dismiss it either. It's like, oh, it's interesting. Yeah, something's happening, and it's good to know something's happening. So Ricardo in Amsterdam, how you doing?
Hi everyone. Very grateful for this nice time. It began for me at 4 a.m.
Yeah, right.
So it's a great opportunity to begin again my practice in the morning. I lost it for last 2 weeks. I had been going to too many meetings online, and then suddenly my discipline of having 2 meetings, one in the morning, one in the evening, got lost in the way. And I noticed that how the slow down of the practice takes over, and then the not being aware and being more shaky and jumpy about things when I don't meditate daily. It becomes very evident in the daily life. That said, I wanted to give so many thanks to you because this first audio I heard, I read the book. No, I haven't read it completely, but when I went to the website and I did the Vipassana meditation that is there, the audio, that touched me so much, especially the pointers where you say that every time I slip away from the breath, and then I realize it's my moment of awakening. It's not when I come back. It's really when I see myself out of the breath.
Yeah.
And that has helped me so much through all these last months. Every time I'm meditating, I know that I can be kind, that I can be loving, and with a smile come back. And this is the has become the basis of my whole practice. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's that moment when it's so easy to judge yourself negatively. Oh, there I go again. But to realize, well, no, I'm not there right now. Actually, I am waking up. So it is an important shift in view, and it just points to how like our beliefs about things affect, so much how we respond to them.
Last thing I wanted to say is when I've been in the last retreats, I did a Satipatthana, and I had a lot of problems with my back and pain and so, and I had to surrender. And that is not in the technique of Vipassana. Can you, I mean, officially, you are not to surrender. You are to do the technique, you know, and then I couldn't even talk to the practitioners about it because I will be, yeah, you are not doing the technique of Goenka. And
Yeah.
But can you say something about how I integrate surrendering and acceptance? Is that equanimity, or how does it?
I think it is. I think you're pointing to the right thing, that equanimity. I think that equanimity and acceptance, like that, they're the kind of parallels in terms of, like, Buddhism has equanimity, and the recovery we talk more about acceptance. And yeah, and surrender is like right sort of in there too. So I don't know why somebody would tell you. I mean, I think it shows a sort of lack of imagination to say that Vipassana practice doesn't involve surrender. It's maybe more language, you know, because in order to be with your direct experience, you have to be surrendering to that experience in a way. I mean, that's language we can use around it, that our tendency is to try to control our experience, and with Vipassana we're trying to just look closely at our experience. And so to me there's a surrender in there. There's a surrender of ego in that. So I think I'm going to need to go. I see Jeff has his hand up, but Jeff, is there something I can?
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, you're welcome. And by the way, you know that I'm doing the mornings on Tuesday, right? So that's just early evening for you. That's one of the reasons I have the morning show on Tuesday, is so that people in Europe and the UK can be on it in the early evening. So
This is Jeff.
Yeah.
Just to keep it very short, I just want to express my gratitude for your work in the field. I would know nothing about meditation or the Dharma if it wasn't for One Breath at a Time.
Oh.
And you know, I bow deeply to you for that. I planted lettuce, and it turns out that you have to water the lettuce and make sure that it has sunshine. You don't get a salad on the third day after you plant it.
Uh-huh.
I've been retired for 2 years, and I actually took up a daily morning half-hour or more practice, and it does make a great deal of difference when you put the time in. And that was, by the way, on your advice. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Thanks, Jeff. So I'll maybe the moment of metta. I want to really send some loving kindness to the daughter of a friend who's in the hospital with lymphoma, Katie's daughter. So just really, and just to send some loving kindness and compassion out into the world as best we can. Hopefully our practice together can be of benefit for the world, and if we can maintain some balance, some equanimity, some acceptance, that we can bring to this world in turmoil. So may all beings be free from suffering. May all beings find freedom, peace, serenity. For those in the United States, happy Memorial Day weekend. And I'll see you Tuesday morning. So thanks, everybody, for coming. Good night.
Thanks, Kev.
Okay.